Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Batter Box podcast. Here on this podcast, we talk about Africans in diaspora, Africans in Africa, and we also talk about a host of different topics covering the African continent. I'm your host, Brother Mike. This episode is perhaps one of our best episodes. It's really, really good. And we talked about a lot of things. Primarily, we focused on meditation. What is meditation? How to meditate? And what are ways in which we can escape our present state and kind of transcend into the spirit, whereby we can be more in a conscious and more meditative form. We also talked about God, we talked about death, we talked about prayer, talked about gratitude, we talked about consciousness, desires, and be more grateful. So again, it's a really, really nice episode. It's an episode you're really, really going to want to listen to. And we've intentionally just left it as one episode. In the past, what we'll do is we split it into two. There'll be a part one and part two. This episode is quite packed, and we just decided to just leave it all as one full episode. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Thanks for listening, and feel free to share this with someone that you know if you do find any value in it. And you're welcome to listen to part of it, pause it, and continue later. You're also welcome to listen to all of it in one piece. However, I strongly advise that I listen to the very end. It gets better and better as we keep talking and talking. Again, really great episode, and I'm sure you're going to love it and enjoy it as much as we did recording it. Enjoy.
Turn it up. I told you now. Please.
You are worse than me.
Another year is ending. Shake it, why?
Today we are going to be talking about meditation, something that is a bit of a recent, something that's quite recent where a lot of people have been talking about it. We kind of wanted to broach that topic. And with me, I have a dear friend of mine who is someone who I consider to be more spiritual than most of us in terms of he's been meditating for a while. And he's also been someone who's actually quite an influencer in regards to the area of meditation. Ade's been a friend of mine, and I'm so happy to have him on. Ade, welcome to Batterbox. Meditation, like what's the importance of meditation? Or what's your general philosophy anyway about meditation?
I think we make it more complicated than it needs to be. We have to look at it from what's the end goal of meditation. Is it more of a means to an end, or is it the end itself? Right. So if our goal is to have this level of awareness and consciousness in all our activities that we go through on a day-to-day basis, shouldn't we essentially ensure that our form of meditation mimics that outcome or becomes an habitual task that we perform in order to constantly put us in this level of awareness and consciousness? So I like to think that, yes, the goal would be to essentially establish that level of consciousness by essentially being aware of your day-to-day activities in the form of whatever you want to call it, which in this case may be meditation, right? So, for example, if you know me and you now we're somewhere and we're just hanging out, chilling, I think you can still be meditating in that process and not feel like you have to be in this Zen-like mode under a tree with no distraction, away from everything. So I feel like the definition of meditation has to be all encompassing of wherever you are, whatever you're doing, or whatever you're not doing, if that makes sense.
So you're saying we're hanging out, you can still be meditating when I'm shouting on your head, and we're all in a big argument.
Yeah.
How is that possible? I thought meditation means you're
exactly
quiet.
That is a good point, right? So the best way to describe it is you're not trying to be still or be quiet, like you just said. That is not meditation, because what happens is when you're trying to do that, you're creating a mental problem in your head because you don't have that environment that's allowing you to be quote-unquote quiet since you're shouting at me. So what you're essentially trying to do is you want to be aware, be still, be quiet underneath all of the shouting, all of the everything that you're saying. So essentially, I'm hearing you shout, but I'm not getting pulled into your shouting. I am still, quote unquote, still. I'm meditating. I'm aware of what is going on, but at the same time, I'm not getting pulled into it or sucked into it or feel like I have to be reactive. I act when I want to act or don't act. It's a very strange way of looking at it, but you're realizing that you are beyond the thoughts, the words that are coming out from other people's mouths or not coming out of other people's mouths. So that to me is kind of how I view meditation. I don't view it as this level of, you have to be extremely still. Because to your point earlier, before we even started this recording, you were mentioning, idea of being focused. There are times when you can be focused in a very climatic environment and still maintain this level of awareness that most people may lack. And I think, to me, that is the core of meditation, because everything else that you're trying to do is forcing, or I shouldn't say everything else, but if your goal is, I need to be in a still environment or quiet environment, what you're doing unknowingly is creating a problem. You're forcing something that may not necessarily allow itself to happen because of either the environment you're in or the neighboring distractions around. I don't know if that is making sense, but essentially how.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me. As you're talking, I was looking up the definition here on the dictionary, and the Oxford Dictionary here is saying that meditation means to think deeply or focus on one's mind for a period of time. And it goes on to say it could be in silence or with the aid of chanting for religious or spiritual purposes, or it could be as a method of relaxation. So I kind of agree with you there for a little bit. Basically, when you are thinking deeply. So you and I were hanging out. I can be talking and making a point, but meditate means to think deeply. And that's the, meditation is just think upon these words. Like some religious, like those Christians and Muslims, when they are praying, they are just in deep thought. So what you're saying can be a good thing, but it can also mean that you are absent-minded. Couldn't that be the case? I mean, by stretch.
Yeah, but I hear you. But even the definition of think deeply, I guess is possible. But what is it to think? What does that mean to think? I guess you have to look at it as your mind is a tool, right? It's a storage information system. So to think deeply means you're accessing information that's already registered, either subconsciously or consciously. But to think doesn't necessarily mean that is who you are. There used to be this saying, I think, therefore I am. But in reality, you're beyond your thoughts. So to think deeply, to me, is not really meditation, to be honest with you. I think to think deeply is using your mind, which is a tool that you don't necessarily need to, I guess, to exist, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of very strange to even put it that way, because most people cannot disassociate any thoughts that comes to their mind from themselves. But what I'm trying to describe is, like, for example, as we're having this conversation right now, you may be thinking like, okay, you're trying to respond saying, well, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense in what you're saying, because you have to think in order to exist, because any thought that comes to your mind has to be you, right? But in reality, that is not the case. There are so many dreams that we have, consciously or unconsciously, that are not ours. There are things that I can see on the TV right now, and subconsciously I absorb, and then I kind of feel like that is who I am. So me thinking deeply on those thoughts and things that I've absorbed, because I have this mind, which is a storage information system, doesn't necessarily help me, if that makes sense. It doesn't help me be more aware of the true being which I am, which is beyond thoughts, emotions, my physical presence, and things of that nature. So it's definitely beyond thoughts, or realizing that
beyond thoughts or the absence of thoughts?
Yeah. Beyond thoughts or the absence of thoughts. I'm not sure if there's even a real difference between both. Because if you exist absence of thoughts and you're still beyond thoughts. So it can be both, I guess, for lack of a better way of describing it. But the main thing is to realize that just like you have your hand as a tool that you use to carry one thing from one place to another or use to write, it's the same thing you have your mind that you use to generate or analyze things to better have a better understanding of it in the physical realm of the world. But they're not different. But it's very hard for people to understand those two things because you can see your hand, but you cannot see your mind. But you use your mind just the same way you would use your hand. But for some people, it's hard for us to see those differences. I don't know if this is even making any sense, but I think it's when you look at it from that.
Honestly, as a Nigerian guy that I am, I believe that a lot of Africans struggle with this. And your explanation is actually making some sense. But if you step back a little bit, can I ask you, like, when you were in Nigeria, like, obviously you're not in Nigeria right now, but when you were in Nigeria, as a Nigerian, growing up in Nigeria, before you immigrated out of Nigeria, were you in a position where you could think or have meditative thoughts, or were you in meditative states?
I mean, back when I was in Nigeria, I was still a teenager, I was still a young guy, so I don't think that really occurred to me now. Now, when my Male died, so I think that was the first sense of, I wouldn't say awakening, but it was the first sense of, okay, there's something beyond this earth, right? So she passed away when I was 16. So at that point, you start to question things, but you don't really. No, thank you. I mean, it happens. Actually, I shouldn't say it happens because that's also some way of me just ignoring it. So no, I appreciate you saying that. But I think the reality is all that did for me as the Nigeria guy, because at that point I'm still trying to figure out next steps of because I'm still associated with the human form. And not to say that I'm now this, spiritual guru or something, that I'm not associated with human form, but I was still associated with the very basic necessities of survival after your mom passed away. What's the future hold? Are you going to be like the friends that you know from high school and you guys saying you're going to be doctors, engineers, lawyers, study abroad, have, the dream house, marry, grow old, have children. So I still had a lot of those thoughts as my own. And that goes back to my whole point of know your thoughts, because a lot of those dreams and desires were put in to me by someone, by society, by people around me. But they were never mine. They were just things that I felt I needed to be in order to be. When in reality, I'm already what I'm looking for, if that makes sense. I'm already existing beyond those accomplishments that are yet to materialize. So yeah, so to answer your question more directly, yeah, I mean, at that 16, I'm not thinking of enlightenment. I don't even know what that even means. I don't even know. I mean, meditation, I know about fasting because I was born Catholic. So we go through this Lenten period of trying to connect beyond who you are, or at least connect to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. At least that's how I was told to look at this particular fasting or Lenten period as this sense of connecting some way. So one can say that maybe that was a form of meditation because I was focused on this period of giving up certain things. So by giving up certain things, I created this level of discipline, which indirectly, in some degree, led me to be focused, because I had to be focused, or being disciplined kind of ties into being focused, because it's hard to be disciplined without having some level of focus. And so, as we spoke earlier, having that level of focus on something or nothing allows you to be in some way aware of something or nothing, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think ultimately it's night and day. At that time, at 16, I'm not even. I don't even think I'm quarter of who I am now. But I think at least my mom passing away allowed me to even start thinking beyond my natural existence, because she was just here yesterday and now she's not here tomorrow. But technically, where did she go? Where did she come from? You start having those questions. You start reading or hearing about books like the forget the name of this book now. It was by Viktor Frankl. I think it was a survivor of the Holocaust. I think The Man's Search for Meaning. I think that was the first book that I came across. You know, he was asking like, what is the meaning of life and all those things because of based off his tragic experience during the Holocaust. So, and at the end of the day, you start to realize finding the meaning isn't necessarily the goal. And if you find the meaning, how do you really know you found the meaning? Because there's nobody that can validate it that's present here. Because they can tell you, okay, you're going to heaven or you're going to hell. Man-made created heaven, man-made created hell, or whatever it is. But the reality is, if there's nobody to confirm that you trust, which so essentially, if my mom doesn't come back and tell me this is exactly how it is, how do I really know what it is? So why even spend too much time on something that cannot be proven or disproven? Why have those beliefs when the reality is maybe I just don't know, and not knowing is what should empower me to I guess be aware of the fact that we are all so connected in ways that we may not physically know or understand. And so by understanding we're part of this one whole, not to digress, because this can go into multiple ways or multiple directions, this conversation, but just realizing that, you know, we're beyond our thoughts or emotions and we're all connected because you want the same thing I want. It just looks very differently in some cases, or maybe it doesn't. But the reality is, you know, if I cry now, you start to cry unknowingly or not. You know, there are those movies you watch or those events you see in life that you connect deeply. Why? You've never seen these individuals, you've never seen them before, but you can connect with the human experience. And so by being able to see the humanity or see that connection allows you to have a deeper, more meaningful experience rather than searching for the meaning of life. You're already experiencing it because you're having a deeper, connected experience with everyone, regardless of race, gender, class, whatever the case may be. You can relate to them. And I think by doing that, that is also a form of awareness that people marginalize, or people reduce. They reduce it to something insignificant, but it is quite significant, being able to see that connectedness beyond your naked eyes or beyond what you're normally supposed to connect to. Like you and I, with the Niger guys, so obviously people are like, oh, you're supposed to be connected. But there are so many Niger people where you and I know where we're not connected to them, and we're connected to other people of different, you know, gender, race, whatever, or ethnicity and nationality, right? So it's also bringing that level of awareness in those interactions where you're not blinded by the obvious, but you can see beyond the obvious, or see without the obvious.
Yeah, I love your response. I mean, well put. A couple of items I draw from that is that tragedy might force us to realize what's our existence, or maybe someone having an existential crisis can make them realize, oh my God, like what's going on? Why am I here? And I think back to our conversation at the beginning, how we started this conversation about meditation. We meditate in Nigeria, but in a different form. Religious. Remember, I had the Oxford definition. It could be a religious or chanting. So prayer is the way people actually meditate in Nigeria. Prayer, some going to church where they sit still. The Bible talks about, you know, be still and know that I am the Lord. And the Holy Quran, there's a lot of instances to where you have to wake up in the morning, pray 5 times a day. And to me, even that 5 times a day prayer, that's where you are. Meditation is like taking a break from everything. And the Islamic brothers and sisters, they pray 5 times daily, 7 days a week. And then they fast as well, as just like Christians have Lent. So it's just And a lot of non-denominational churches this day, in the new year, many churches, I won't mention them, they have 40 days and stuff like that by the fast. So the way we kind of spiritualize it, whereby you almost don't know that you are meditating because you are praying. And maybe you are meditating if you have like your devotion in the morning. But in the West, the definition of meditation is quite different than that. My understanding of meditation, which I got exposed to in college when I took a non-Western religious class, I didn't even know anything about meditation. I again grew up in Christian, non-denominational, whatever, or maybe Baptist. I guess you can say I was a bit Baptist. I didn't really know meditations until I took that class here. Actually, it was a graduate school class. But that opens my eyes to, like, for example, have you ever stopped and just look at the thumb of your hand, like your palm, and just observe your palm like a crazy, some people say you are crazy, like these guys are crazy. But by stopping and looking at your palm, which a lot of people don't do, you are just like, wow, this is my hands. Your hands do a lot for you. You can go 10 years without ever looking at your palm, but it's there every day. Like you said, you can see it. But just stopping and say, wow, I have this line here, I have that line. Or maybe in the shower, just like taking a minute in the shower and just like that water is running down, no thoughts, nothing. Or in the mirror, we're all getting older. You're looking at the mirror, oh my God, look, this wrinkle, that wrinkle. So that kind of stuff, there are ways to meditate. Or you can even be observing your breath. Just sitting still and following your breath in, breath out. So that's a different form of meditation than what we grew up, you and I grew up in Nigeria, thought, we're in the States now. But in Nigeria, that's something that we didn't really connect to, we didn't know. So, but you seem to have a different philosophy yourself. Like you say meditation is something else. Meditation is not really necessarily that. Meditation can be, you and I have had this conversation over and over. Meditation can be the absence of a thought or a lack of a thought. You don't even need to be thinking. But then earlier on, you said, well, you can be in an argument with someone and be meditating. So how do those two parallel, how do you reconcile them? I guess it's kind of my own point of confusion here.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think it's also looking at it from the standpoint of what do we define as meditation, right? So is it the act or the lack thereof? What does it mean to meditate, to ponder? What does it mean to ponder? It says to think, or at least it says to think deeply. But like I said, I don't think, no pun intended, I don't think that, or maybe pun intended, I don't think that being able to think or ponder means that you're meditating. Like you said a couple of things, like the example of being in the shower, looking at your palm. You're bringing a level of awareness. So substitute your palm with an argument with someone. You're watching the argument. You're hearing the rise in the voice. You're seeing the body language, assuming you guys are physically present. You're seeing how this person is reacting to something you said or didn't say or what they expected you to say. But you're still in this state of awareness. So the way I would like to look at meditation is a form of getting closer to consciousness or awareness, which I think is something we should practice consistently across the board.
Okay, hold on. It's a form of getting closer to consciousness. Could that be the same as mindfulness?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you can say it's the same as mindfulness because now, but that means you're aware. But this is the difference, right? It depends on who you ask. I haven't looked at the dictionary definition of mindfulness, but to some people, mindfulness means they are all aware. I mean, they are aware of their thoughts, right? But to some people, mindfulness means all they are doing is just thinking indiscriminately, just non-stop thinking. And that is mindfulness. But so I like to think of it as the former. It's like you're fully aware that your mind is a tool, like I said, that you can use to do an exercise, which is critically think through something, store information, or create new information based on existing information. Right? So when you start to look at the mind as a storage system, like something that's outside of you, then you can physically describe it in the same way you would describe your hand or your physical parts of your body that you can see on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, the dictionary
So,
defines
yes,
mindfulness as the state of being conscious or aware of something. Very simple. State of being conscious or aware of something.
Got you. Fair enough. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that definition. I think words in general, I mean, they're the best ways we can communicate. Like you and I are having this conversation, but there are certain things that are beyond words that cannot be easily described. And it's not a way of copying out, of saying, you just don't want to have a definition. It's just that words are sometimes reductive in nature by their design, because I think I've said this to you before, but the moment a child knows the definition of something or puts a name to something, that child ceases to know the essence of that something. So essentially, if I have a child now and I'm telling the child, hey, this is a bird, since I've given that child the experience that the world has given me, which is whatever this object is that looks like this object, we call it a bird. The moment I tell that child that this is what you should call it now, the child may have been looking at this, like you were saying, in amazement initially of the palm, of taking a shower, like, wow, look at this small creature. It has eyes. It has what I think may be a nose, but it's so pointed. It has very sharp objects, and it can poke you. Wow, what is this? This is interesting. But the moment I call it a bird, the child may not even know. Me, as I'm even giving the child that definition, I may not know, but what I'm doing now is I've reduced that creature's experience to a physical name that we as a society, as a world, has agreed to calling this particular object. And the moment that happens, we start to go to the dictionary. Okay, so what is a bird? A bird is a type of, I don't know, species that flies or whatever. So now that's kind of what we just describe it for now. It depends on type of bird. It depends on how many wings it may have, how much, levitation and ability to fly it may have, and all those things. But we still don't really know what a bird is. But we have caught up with this definition that you and I have created in order to have a conversation. So there's a necessity. I don't want this to get misconstrued. There's a necessity for those words, but we shouldn't let those words limit us from going beyond what they were supposed to serve, which was just a way for you and I to communicate and establish some level of understanding in order to move forward and have some congruency or understanding between us and everyone around us.
Yeah, I like that. Basically, you are saying that you may have to sometimes not attach labels to things. So when meditating, you might just say consciousness and leave it at that, or mindfulness and leave it at that. An example I can think about is one of these books, one of the Eckhart Tolle, I think is The New Life, or I think it's called The New Life.
The New Earth.
The New Earth, thank you. The New Earth, yeah. The New Earth. And it was talking about where someone, was meditating with, all these Indian retreats whereby they go and meditate, whatever. And the guys go there to meditate. And he's one of these guys that's very high energy, he's very, impatient. So I was talking to the master and say, Master, how do I find Zen? How do I find a state of peace and quiet in my mind? So the master lifted up one finger and he said, enter Zen from there. He pointed over a mountain, like, enter Zen from here. Sorry about the background. It's kind of July 4th. There's fireworks everywhere.
Yeah, no worries. I'm not really actually.
Yeah, good. Okay. So he said, enter Zen from there. And he pointed up to somewhere in the sky. Like, there's no definition for Zen, So that's the moral of that story, that because you can't really enter Zen by using words. Sometimes you just have to have an abstract, like an abstract definition, which meditation is a process whereby, in my own view, whereby you're not even, it's a thoughtless form almost. But by saying a thoughtless form, what you're saying that I've reduced definition by using the word thoughtless form, which I find very interesting. So is meditation then like not saying anything, just conscious? Just
no, I wouldn't say correct. Like that's what I was saying. Like, not to misconstrue it. It's not so much that I think it's kind of the best word I think that most people can kind of understand to some degree is awareness, right? Consciousness still has layers, but some people don't really know. When you say consciousness, you can be speaking from completely different realms. But people think that the fact that they are awake, that means they are conscious, or the fact that they are fighting some social justice warrior things, that they are woke or conscious, right? But in reality, it's beyond those things. So I'm not saying that meditation is a thoughtless form per se. What I'm saying is that our definition of meditation, regardless of what that definition is, can be limiting. It doesn't mean that it's not included in the overall definition. But me saying the thoughtless form, for example, is still limiting because it could still be part of a thoughtful form, if there's even the opposite of that, of thoughtless form versus a thoughtful form. It could be part of that as well. It's all encompassing. And I think the easiest way to describe it is awareness that you're beyond your thoughts. And I know I keep going back to thoughts. I've probably said thoughts like 5,000 times, but it's not just thoughts, really. Right? It's also you're beyond your life experiences, which the only way you can tap into your life experience is through thinking and mind, because you have this storage information that can take you back to 20 years ago or 30 years ago. But you being aware that you're not those thoughts, but you're beyond or underneath those thoughts, or the absence of those thoughts, is really powerful. And I think the example that I like to give, or at least the way I like to try to connect to what is beyond thoughts, because for some people now, they probably maybe are listening to this for the last 20 minutes. They're like, what is this guy talking about? I think so, therefore I am. What are you saying? I have to be my thoughts now. I mean, are you saying that there's some juju or something that's putting all these thoughts in my head? No, you just have to really look at it realistically. And the easiest way is to just look at your mind as a storage information system, like I've said. But I think easy way to connect is, just try telling yourself something or saying something right now in your mind as well, even having this conversation, wherever you are, just saying, I'm listening to this conversation. Just keep saying that in your mind. I'm listening to this conversation. You have to now ask yourself, how are you able to do that? How are you able to hear yourself say, I am listening to this conversation over and over? What is creating that duality of the person that is hearing it and the person that is saying it? The subject and the object. Which one are you? Are you the object? Are you the subject? What is the point of you being able to say, I'm listening to this conversation over and over in silence? You're not mouthing this out, but you're still able to hear it. So the person that's able to hear it, is that the mind or is that beyond the mind?
Oh, the person hearing it is the same as the one saying it?
That's the question. So who are you? Are you the listener or the sayer? Or are you not? Are you neither? So I think when you start going into those realms, and I don't know if we have enough discussion to break that down into further, enough time to break that into further, but I think that's a food for thought, no pun intended, or maybe that's a pun intended, is being able to understand those dynamics. When you start opening those doors of seeing beyond your thoughts, it's a very enlightening and strengthening process. You don't have to go to the Himalayas or anywhere or talk to people for hours, but just doing those very simple exercises of, like, even for example, there's this, people will always say, oh, I love myself, I think let me stick to I love myself, because if I go into another example, that might be complicated. When you say I and you say myself, you're essentially describing two people. That sounds like a very insane person that needs to be locked up, because I love myself. So who is the I and who is the myself that you're loving? So is it that you love yourself, or you have disconnected from your essence, and that's why you're thinking that those are two different entities, when in reality it's just one entity that is a small portion of a larger entity, which is our existence as a whole. Right? There's a saying of, and this is not something that I haven't truly fully understood, but there's this saying that there's no my life or your life. We're all just experiencing life as a whole. We're all part of this larger connectiveness or consistency of life. So when I say my life, it's very reductive. I do have life experiences that you don't have, but I don't necessarily have a life. And that was the example I was trying not to go into, but it just kind of led me into that from I love myself to life as a whole. But I think when you start having those discussions of like those dualities, the one that is thinking, the one that is coming up with the thoughts, the one that is saying I love myself, who is myself, who is I? Do those two, are they separated? Or is it just a way that we as humans have chosen to communicate with one another that is also limiting us and preventing us from connecting to the source which is greater than our physical realm and our physical nature as humans?
Yeah, I'm just taking some notes here. The one that I think, I love myself parts. That one I've never heard that before. I like how you put it. Who's the I, who's myself? You're also referencing the consciousness, like at death, what leaves the body. That's the easiest way for me to be able to understand that. At death, they will say, this person's spirit has moved out. That spirit is that consciousness. And that consciousness is the one who's, the consciousness is the one who is you, your identity. However, there's the mind. So, going back to our Christianity 101, for those of us that took CRK, Christian religious knowledge, they talked about my spirit, soul, and body. So, and that's what this goes down to. I mean, we're getting really into the weeds here. Spirit, soul, and body. So at death, what separates from someone from the body at death, that's you. That's your personality. That's consciousness. Right? So there's the spirit, there's the soul, and there's the body. So people say, well, there's the soul, there's the mind, and the body. So if you break your identity into three, there's the body, which Christians, talk about, the body decay, blah, 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 all that stuff. So that's the body. Then there's also the spirit and the soul. If you only think where you can think about the soul and then
the spirit and the soul, is what you mean the mind and the soul?
Yeah, the mind and the soul. People, Bible always says spirit, soul, and body. So it's like spirits. But
mind, I thought it was mind, body, and soul.
I know that's the other non-religious definition of it. Mind, body, and soul. Remember, there's mind and then there's soul, or there's soul and spirit. So spirit is a synonym for mind in this case. All meaning the same thing.
I guess that's kind of what I was trying to understand. I wasn't trying to cut you short.
I understood.
Establish what you meant by that. Because in my mind, I still look at soul and spirit as similarity versus spirit and mind. I don't see them too similar. That makes sense.
In the religious part, my understanding anyway is that you have your spirit, soul, and the body. So, but back to the conversation about meditation. When you are going about your day to day, there's your consciousness. Your consciousness in this case that's who you. Remember, I say I love myself. So I love myself. I'm just trying to answer your question. It's basically the consciousness talking to the mind. Is the consciousness telling the mind and saying, hey, I'm here. I'm the one here. I'm Brother Mike. I'm the one here. That's the consciousness. But the person who is listening is the mind. So, for example, I'm driving on the way. I'm like, oh, wow, look at that tree. That tree is very, very dry. I guess it's because of the rain from yesterday. There's someone there who is talking. That's the mind. That mind is not me. That mind is not who I am, because I am observing the mind. I'm listening to the mind.
Correct.
So meditation is where you basically shut the mind off. There's someone who is observing. Remember, we talked about the definition in the beginning about awareness. There's somebody who is observing, and that person is the one that is aware. So that person that is aware is the one that's actually like, okay, I'm here. He's also like, what's your name? Oh, my name is James Brown. How's your name, James Brown? Who told you your name is James Brown? Why are you, back to your comment about limitation, why are you limiting yourself to James Brown? If you're a woman and you get married and your husband's name is Alex, are you now James Alex? I guess bad example with a James Brown there. Or are you Jasmine Alex if you were Jasmine Brown, for example? So does that change your identity by the name? So I think meditation is where that mind is silenced and you just be here. I like what you said earlier too about waking up when you are sleeping. Who's dreaming? The dreams you are having, who's that person that's dreaming? Then when you wake up, who is the person saying, oh, it's 7:50. Why did I wake up at 7:50? I have to work at 8. I'm so going to be late. There's traffic on 3rd Mainland Branch. I won't get to work till 10. My boss is going to kill me. That's the mind. So the person who is observing, who is listening, who is watching, who is seeing that movie theater playing, that is the mind. I'll give one more example because I remember now when you talk about movie theater.
That is not the mind, right? That's what you mean.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. That person who is observing is not the mind. Yeah, you're right. But if you go and watch a movie, let's say you go and watch, or even if you watch a movie on Netflix or Yoruba Nollywood or whatever it is you watch, and you're watching that, when you're watching that movie, that person who gets lost in the movie, if you go and watch a movie and you just lose yourself, like the movie starts at 7 p.m. and movie finish at 10. Between 7 and 10, you get lost in the movie. I remember watching Titanic in the 90s when Titanic first came out. And I was so glued to it. And I was like, I just forgot I was in a room. You become part of that movie in a way. You shut the mind down. So that's the consciousness. So meditation really, in the Western definition, is actually being able to shut the mind off. How does that sound?
Yeah, I think anything that has to do with shutting off a particular part is scary in my mind, because I look at, we've talked about the hand, for example, and I think that's always just a good point of reference for people at least to be able to easily relate and not get confused by the conversation. But to even take it a little deeper, imagine shutting down your heart. What would that mean?
Shutting down your heart?
Yeah, your heart.
Oh, you should be dead if you shut your heart down.
Exactly. So why do you want to shut your mind as well?
I see what you're saying. Because it's too loud and it's driving me crazy. It's making noise.
But your heart is beating right now. It's beating as we're talking right now. It's been beating throughout this whole conversation.
That's an autonomous function. I know there's the autonomous. Now, I'm not a medical person, but there's something that automatic, I guess. So like breathing, the heart. So you really don't control that. You can't shut that down even if you tried.
Exactly. So why are you trying to shut down the mind? I think
because you can. That's meditation. Practice.
I think I hear what you're saying, but I think I disagree with you saying you can shut down the mind.
You said I love myself. Who is the I? Who is the myself? And I'm telling you, the I is that consciousness. That's the spirit. Like when somebody dies, whatever, what leaves the body? That's the spirit. The mind is just that piece. The mind is the chatter. It's just like you're crazy. You're talking to yourself.
Understood, but it doesn't have to. I guess when you say the word shut down, is in my mind when you shut down something,
it's negative.
It ceases to exist. It just ceases to exist, right? That's how I'm choosing that. Maybe that's my interpretation.
It ceases to exist.
And so what I'm trying to say is, it's not that you shut down the mind. You are aware of the mind, that you're not the mind. I think that is a deeper, a more productive way.
Yeah. So meditation is where you are aware that you're not the mind. I like that.
Correct. Versus you saying I have to shut down the mind. Because like I said, trying to shut down the mind is a huge problem. It's essentially, that's why I use the heart example. It's like trying to shut down your heart. Your heart is not to stop being you. It's been quiet. But there are some people that have...
Sorry, I disagree with you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I disagree with you because you have not achieved the state of enlightenment. If you have achieved the state of enlightenment or this spirituality, you won't be able to not shut down the mind. It's going to be harder in the beginning, but it will slowly be getting easier and easier and easier and easier.
Yeah, but I guess maybe it's the wording, right? But I think anytime if you're trying to establish or at least create a sustainable solution for people or for us as a human, when you say shut down the mind, it's almost like you're essentially killing the mind. That's how I look at it. And maybe it's too extreme.
So the mind is not
maybe
the
that's
Mexico
not
border that we have to shut down, according to our
I don't know about that. Yeah, according to you and your former president, I don't know about that one. But yeah, my point being, it's something that can still exist, and you can still be aware that it exists. It should not be looked at as a negative, right? I guess that's kind of the whole point I was trying to get at.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
When you're trying to shut down the mind, you're like,
maybe is a better word.
I know. Yeah, talk that again.
Cope with it is a better word.
But even coping with it is not even good. That's the thing, right? It's like, because coping almost makes it seem like it's an enemy. You're coping.
Managing it.
I'm just managing with this thing. It's like when you see your friends like, I'm managing. What is I'm managing? I'm striving.
This is a very good conversation. You know why? Because it also goes into gratitude. The mind is probably one of the number one reason why people are ungrateful or cannot enjoy their life, so be happy with what they have.
Yeah.
Because the mind is like, look at what that one has. This one has this one has it. Oh, my husband will never do this. My wife will never do this. Oh, that me bad thing, bad. The mind is just running our lives every day, whereby the practice of meditation. I support what you are saying, though. What you are saying is, let us be aware of it. So if I'm aware of my mind, it's easier for me to be more grateful because I know that's my mind talking. But I don't need to kill the mind.
No, you don't have to kill the mind to be able to meditate or be focused or to achieve what you want, right? There are three things that people want in this life, at least from definitions that I've seen from authors that I've read, from your Michael Singers to Eckhart Tolle, even Sadhguru as well.
Yeah, all those guys.
And even this guy Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of the Fifth Agreement and A Master of Love. We're all looking for peace, joy, fulfillment, and some people interchange that fulfillment with love.
Maharishi.
Now, for most,
that's not that
but for most, for most people, they have different definitions of love. They look at this love as this give and take type of thing, as opposed to something that you can actually be. You can be at peace. You can be love. You can be fulfilled, and you can be joyous. We're all looking for the same thing, right? So I think once we establish that ground rules, like this is all the same thing, just going to come in different forms. I think that allows us to stop creating enemies within ourselves. Like you start to appreciate, going back to your point about gratitude, the fact that you and I have this mind that I can go back to 15, 20, 30 years ago. As long as I can remember, I can go back to that far and be able to picture exactly what happened to some degree. Now, obviously, the mind is not a perfect system, but being able to have that ability, that is a blessing. It's a gratitude that we should all have, that we can be able to access it. But when, to your point, when we start using comparison, like one of the famous presidents said, Franklin Roosevelt, comparison is the stealer of joy. At least I think it was him that said it. If it's not him, I give him credit, or whoever said it. Mm-hmm. Comparison is the stealer of joy. When you're constantly comparing, you're still using this mind or this wonderful tool that can help you recall, that can help you imagine the unimaginable, create possibilities that you and I have never even heard of, nobody has heard of. But now we have reduced it to this thing that we just used to compare with each other. So if I'm not here, then I don't belong there. If I'm not here, then I don't belong there. If I'm there, then where do I really belong? Yeah, or I've arrived, but now I still have to go to another there. So the there keeps going and going because there's always other people there that I haven't yet met that are quote unquote, I'm not what they are. and so I have to meet up or compensate in some way to get to who or what I think they are or what I should be. When in reality, it's beyond all of those. But anyway.
Yeah, can I ask you one question as we kind of wrap this down? This is a very good conversation, so thank you so much. As we wrap this down, question I want to ask you is, you talked about meditation. Remember in the beginning, you said you are talking to a friend, your argument, whatever, you guys are having a conversation. And what you said was you might be meditating there, but then I talked about like your mind, absent-mindedness and stuff. So I think, though, that based on the premise we established, when you and I are having an argument and I'm not present there, that's my mind wandering. That's not necessarily meditation. Unless...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's your mind wandering, isn't it?
Yeah. Anytime you're not present, like right now, we've been talking for how many hours, right? If I was doing multiple things, I could have been cooking, I could have been doing other things, which is fine. There's a saying of you can walk and chew gum, right? Because you're using different senses to be able to still do those two separate things. But you are aware of both of them to a varying degree, if that makes sense. So you're coming in and out of that awareness. In some cases, you might be aware that your teeth is chewing the gum, mixing with your saliva. At the same time, you're walking upstairs, downstairs. At the same time, you and I were having this conversation. You could have been typing, you could have been writing. Just the same way you're writing notes and taking notes. You're still aware, you're taking notes. You're aware of what we have been talking about, but you're able to come in and out of the discussion. It's like you can be surrounded by very loud noise at the background, but that can become a background noise or it can be a foreground noise, depending on how you choose to be aware of it. The issue that we see happening is people are not comfortable in wherever they so happen to be. So what that means is, if you're in a place where there's so much noise and distraction, be there. Be aware that there's that distraction and noise. The issue is we're fighting that moment. We're like, I don't want to be here. This is terrible. I want to be quiet. I'm a quiet person. I don't like all this distraction. All this thing is just getting on my nerves, right? And so what ends up happening is, when you have that mindset, you can never truly be aware or just be there. You always end up feeling absent-minded, like you don't belong. You're always searching for where you should be, when in reality, you are where you should be. Right now, as we're having this conversation, there's nothing more important than this conversation.
Right.
Not because it's like so in-depth or depth or whatever. It's just because it allows me, and hopefully allows the people that are participating in the conversation, to be fully present, because there's so much power in the presence, and we take that for granted. And when I say power, I mean there's a aliveness, there's a sense of spiritual presence that you don't necessarily get when you're not in the moment. So being aware of the noise and everything doesn't make you absent-minded. It's when you choose to long for a different place, which is either going back to the past or looking forward to the future, because you're like, this guy is just talking too much, man. I'm tired of all this conversation. When is this going to end? I need to go and eat. It's almost 10 p.m. I have to go and wake up for work. You start adding all those distractions. But the easiest way to end this conversation would be like, man, I'm seeing myself drifting. You know what? I think this conversation, while it's good, it should end very soon so I can move on. But don't try to end it before it ends, because by doing that, you're losing this level of power and presence that you have, that you can carry from moment to moment and continue to strengthen yourself, both spiritually and even physically, in this realm that we live in.
Wow. No, that's very good. And lastly, the role of prayer and the role of spiritual exercises, as we know it, practice religion. How does that affect? Because I knowing what I know now, and just with the plethora of how deep we've gone as we're wrapping this down, I'm thinking that when you are praying, we Africans, we go to church, we pray, we go to mosque, we pray. When you are praying, they say you can pray and meditate. I'm wondering how prayer, in a way, allows you to be meditating, especially if you are talking to God and you're like making intercession, as some Christians say they do. How does that, I don't know if you can answer this or not, given that meditation we've defined is the absence of the mind, not killing it, but the mind kind of just being present, the consciousness being aware of what the mind is doing. Say that again?
Yeah, the mind is in the background.
The mind is background. Thank you. Yeah. So how does you like reading the Bible, you meditate on your Bible, because there your mind is still like working, and that's something that some people might be having issues with what we're talking about today.
Yeah, no, I think it's like anything. As much as I said, definition is going to limit our view of what things are. I think it also helps, and this is where it helps in the definition of having a definition. So what is it to pray? Right? To pray is, in my opinion, and maybe you can clarify what that means to you, because maybe it means something different. You're praying because you want something to happen that is not currently happening. Some people call that manifestation. You're manifesting for something that is not here present. Or you're manifesting or hoping for something that you don't want to happen, which in some way is still manifestation, but you're looking at it from a different angle. So me just sitting down here saying, man, by the end of this year, I want to be principal engineer. We know a lot of our Nigerian brothers and sisters that want to be principal engineers. Now this is me taking a jab, but anyway, the point being though is you're manifesting that. So what are you doing? Prayer is a statement. It's just a word that you're affirmation, manifestation. In those realms, it's in those discussions. So when you're doing that, you're telling yourself essentially this is a goal, an objective. And I know some people are probably offended because they're like, this boy is reducing prayer to objective, like it's work or something. Mm-hmm. But it's an objective you're setting. You're setting an objective. So it's like you writing it down as a company. Let's say you as a company, your LLC is this. This is the objective, and you say, I want to do X, Y, and Z. By praying, you're essentially saying the same thing. I want to do X, Y, and Z. In my opinion, right? And this is just my opinion. It has to be. It can't be anyone else's. That's essentially what the same thing you're doing. But it has to be action behind the prayer. As you and I know, this is where a lot of our Nigerian, I don't want to make it Nigerian, but African brothers, and even people in the European and Western culture, when they get caught up in this act of praying, which in my mind is very simple as, and I know using the word simple is very offensive to people. It's very simple as writing this down on a board, on a vision board. I want to be this, or I want to do this. So you're manifesting it. What comes after manifesting isn't to go back to manifesting. It's to go to action. And that is the lacking part that a lot of us have, which is we have been praying for all these things. We pray for this, we pray for good health, but we're still eating nonsense food every day. Okay. So how do you expect that to happen? Your actions have to match what you're manifesting. There's no magical pill. There's no magical thing that will just come from nowhere. Now, what normally happens that people look at as magical is conversations like this, where there are some people that have had certain experiences in their lives and they're able to share them in a very articulate manner, which I hope I've been able to try to do in this conversation. But what happens is they are able to see themselves in these conversations, and that helps them to open what is already there. And that's all that they need. They just need to open what is already there. And so for them, they are like, oh yeah, my prayer has been answered because I've been able to see that this is possible. This is a possibility. I am a possibility. That's the way I look at myself now. For the last 3-4 years, I've been looking at myself as a possibility. I'm not smart. I'm not stupid. I'm not poor. I'm not rich. I'm not healthy. I'm not unhealthy. I'm a possibility. And that frees up a lot of chains that we've put on ourselves, knowingly or unknowingly. Because when you're a possibility, you're anything. And this is not like childlike thinking. This is not like based on, oh, you have no experience life. That's why you can say you're a possibility. Wait until you have 5 children or have
Then
debt
you
all
can
over
see,
your head.
yeah.
No, you're still a possibility regardless of those experiences. But I think sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves and reduce ourselves to our experiences, which goes back to identifying with our thoughts, which goes back to identifying with who we were or what we think we are. So wrapping this all up and going back to your point as far as prayer is a form of affirmation. It's a form of manifestation. You getting whatever you manifested doesn't make you better or worse off than what you were before you achieved that manifestation. You realizing that you're a possibility, regardless of the manifestation coming into reality, is the beginning and the end. And people don't realize that. There's so much depth in that. I don't have to be an engineer before I become a human being. I don't have to become a human being before I realize that I'm a spirit. I don't have to become a spirit before I realize that I'm connected to everything that is living. Plants, animals, anything that is on this earth. But when you reduce yourself to this is who you should be, this is how you should be, how you should present in the world, in the day-to-day activities, you start to think you need X before you can be. But you're already here, so just be, because that is the only thing that matters. Everything else is irrelevant. If I become a whatever from a superficial standpoint, I don't know, a principal engineer or a fellow or multi-millionaire, it doesn't make me better than what I was when I realized that I'm not those things. So anyway, we can go on this forever and ever. But I think if anybody can learn from this discussion is to be able to be aware that whatever thoughts you're having in your mind, they are not who you are. Whether good or bad, don't label thoughts good or bad. Nothing is good or bad. Only thinking makes it so. Some people are like, what do you mean? There's things that are bad in this world. Depends on how you choose to look at it. And I'll leave it there because that becomes a very emotionally charged conversation for a lot of people when you say good or bad. They're like, they have to be good or bad, but you're reducing it. How many things have you said that are bad in your life? And now when you look at it retroactively, you're like, wow, thank you for that. How many people, this is a common saying in prayer or just people in the religious world, like, thank you for not answering my prayer. But then again, we were praying. It goes back to taking me back to prayer. People were praying for the thing that they said they wanted, but now they're thanking God or whoever they are calling
that
God.
did not come.
That the thing did not come. So what are we doing, human beings, right? We have to realize we don't need those things. Those things, they don't make us better or worse.
Or happier.
They don't make us good or bad. It is the realization that you're part of this larger existence. If you succeed right now in whatever you're doing, I'm getting charged a little bit because now I'm going on this my soapbox. So bear with me. Hopefully I will land the plane very soon. But if you are going through something right now, you become successful. I have become successful as well. But the thing is, we've disconnected ourselves. We see ourselves as individuals so much. And there's nothing wrong in that. I want to be clear because I'm very individual. Most people that know me, I'm very, self-minded. I don't get too involved in group thinking. I like to at least try to subjectively look at things.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make me independent of being inspired or being aware of things around me. But so you achieving something right now or being successful in a particular activity, I have also succeeded because now I have potentially a blueprint that if I do choose to go in that realm, that I can look upon or look at.
You can manifest what I did.
Yeah. But this idea that we have that we are thinking like it's a competition, like, so since this person has done this, now I have to achieve more than that person so that, I become better or viewed differently. It's just very silly and very reductive way of looking at life. It's like there are so many people that have inspired me. There are babies. I even saw a small child just going to grocery store. The way the child was just happy, lifelike, not thinking about any problems, just smiling. That made me feel like, wow, okay, yeah, I should be childlike in certain activities. Yeah, I shouldn't put all this burden of being an adult with all these stupid responsibilities that society has put on my head to make me feel like I cannot be connected. So even a child that's 2 years old, 3 years old can teach me something on a day-to-day basis. What am I saying? My point is that there's no need for us to make this more complicated than it needs to be. Right? It's very easy for me now to speak the way I'm speaking because some people that may be listening to this may be in third world countries. They may be in Nigeria, for example, suffering and starving. And here I am talking.
How dare you? Yeah.
Having all these opportunities. But I think the reality is when you don't feel like you have to rely on those outward accomplishments in order for you to exist in life, it's going to be tough depending on what position you are. You're going to go through certain struggles where, you're financially not secure, you're not safe where you are, you're being physically abused, you're being mistreated, right? Just speaking to anybody that's listening to this, you can be going through certain things in your life, but those things are not who you are. And I know it's easy for me to speak that way, but trust me, the person that you're seeing today was not the same person 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, even a year ago. I've been challenged, I've challenged myself, I've been in and out of consciousness. And it's just the part of the human experience, like you said. So I think at the end of the day, when you look at this existence that we all call life, we should be grateful for it. If there's anything anybody can take from this conversation, just be grateful for wherever you are, and not because somebody has it worse than you are, but just because you are.
Wow. No, thank you so much. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for kind of hanging in to the very end. If you are here to this end, that means you really, really have found something very, very touching about this topic. So again, really, really appreciate you guys for kind of listening. Please don't forget to follow us on our social media and also to continue to follow BatterBox. I also want to thank our guest. Thank you so much for being here and for just sharing some of your wisdom with us. We've covered a host of topics, and I've just been very fortunate to again be a friend and also to have been blessed by these musings, like I like to call them, tea time musings that we've had over many nights. With that, thank you guys for listening. Please share this if you find any value in it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you so much, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bata box.